Hey, welcome everyone to the Pro Trade Room Plus. We're here for Citigroup earnings and the CPI report. My name is Lee Goldstein, the trading director at 10-Minute Trades. Please remember, I'm not a financial advisor. All the trades we discuss are for educational purposes. Okay, so first things first. Some of the bank earnings, as we've already seen this morning, are not necessarily reliable. We didn't get JP Morgan to come out on time. Wells Fargo wasn't on time. They were both early. When that happens, it makes it pretty much impossible to trade the earnings. You can watch the charts and you could look for trades after the news, but we had been trading those particular events, not Wells Fargo, but we had been trading Morgan, and they had been early in a reliable way. For the past 3 quarters, they've been releasing at 6:46 and a couple of seconds, but that didn't happen this morning, so didn't catch those earnings. Citigroup, unfortunately, they don't really move the market that much. The most recent video I even have goes back to 2024. I'm just getting a note. So in 2024, I had a video on my computer. Let's just for fun see what kind of moves Citigroup had. So they were due out at 8. They just haven't been a very big mover. They don't check the boxes. It's not an expensive stock. They don't have the power that they used to have. In 20, 30 years ago, they were the only Visa card anyone carried. They were so popular. Now every regional bank and his brother has a Visa card. And how many young people even have Visa cards? But you could see there wasn't even any movement back in 2024. So I'm really not expecting anything out of Citigroup. I think we'll probably just watch it and get ready for the CPI report, which is really the main reason that we're here. But the funny thing about trading is just when you least expect something to happen, that's when something interesting happens. So there's no law that says you can't set up a simple MYM trade, right? Using micros, because if you don't know what to expect, do you really want to risk a couple of $100? Probably not. You probably don't. But with micros, you're talking maybe $10. Frank, I never answered your question. What kind of mic am I using? So I'm using a different headset. It's called TechNet, TECKNET. And it's a wireless headset that converts from mono to stereo. Not really very good quality audio, which you wouldn't expect for $42, but good for trade room. The issue is I'm not sure I can wear anything covering my ears for the amount of time that we spend in the trade room. It just eventually gets so annoying. That's the big problem. But right now we're just watching the YM. The YM is a little bit negative. Right now the markets aren't out of control. Gold only up $6, which is pretty small for gold these days. Now, Langford was thinking something released at 646. 646? Or did you mean 746? Did you mean 646, Langford? because we got Morgan and then Wells Fargo. I believe that was Wells Fargo. That was Wells Fargo. They were early, and it moved the market short. We got now, unless Wells Fargo was 638-ish, I'd have to go back and look at my video because we were talking when I heard in the headset that Wells Fargo did come out and did move the market a little bit more than I would have expected. I think it was before that 646. So if we're trying to do a little bit of research, snooping, detective work, there's not a lot of earnings this morning either. Looking at earningswhispers.com on the calendar, virtually everyone that was expected to be released came out already, which makes sense. Our latest was 7:30. So you have to go through them individually to find out. The only one that hasn't released is Citigroup. BlackRock was out. So I'll have to listen to our previous video talking about Citigroup. So let's assume we're going to get a big, great, fantastic move from Citi. So in the past, we've set up a small range trade. So if it breaks out of the range, you might get a fill. So if you want to sim this, no problem. You don't have to take a risk with real money on this. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put it on MYM 925, and I'll trade it on my small prop number 16. Okay, so we have a small range trade. We're assuming that Citi will come out at 8. Right click the chart, click on strategy, trade type, you're going to change it to range trade. The news is expected at 8. We're going to start our range at 759.30. 759.30. 6 ticks above the range, 6 ticks below the range, and then check the box, show the range graphics on the chart. Position 1, end the range at 759.58. So we have not quite a 30-second range. Starting at 759.30, ending at 759.58. Position 1 is a 1, position 2 is a 1. That means you have one contract for each position. And we're going to use a target of 6 ticks and 15 ticks. Let's go for the 20 tick second target. 6 ticks and 20 ticks. Maybe we get a move. The stop is 20 ticks. And if it hits my first target, I'll move my stop to break even -3. BE -3. Now, we haven't really looked at Citigroup in quite a while because they haven't been moving the market. But what's a prop account for if you can't risk it? So choose the account you're going to trade on, make sure it matches on the chart trader, and then press the enabled box to turn on the range trade. So what's going to happen 30 seconds before 8 o'clock, the range will start to calculate and it will draw a range. And then when the range is over, our orders will appear 2 seconds before the earnings are due out. Now, Citigroup, as far as we recently knew, not the last quarter though, we're going to assume they're going to be on time. When we used to try doing them, they were on time. The problem wasn't the time, it was the amount of the move. It was the impact of the earnings. Now I am having what I think will be a fun webinar tomorrow. A couple of members have shared their market open trades, and I'm going to show everyone those trades and just talk about how you can use our software to find your own market open trades. So definitely register for the webinar. Folks on YouTube, I'm going to put the link in the chat. And everybody is welcome. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes. I have one other Citigroup recording back in April of 24, so a little more than a year ago. Now, inside that video, there are other videos. That's what a longer range looks like. If you create a long range, that's what a range could look like when you're, for instance, that's like a 25-minute range. Okay, so here's April 12th of 2024. And you could see there's virtually no response. The earnings are out because the earnings in the news feed, it says the earnings are out. There's just basically no response. That's why we're not all excited today. And part of the reason, when you think about it, is the importance of Citigroup in the U.S. economy, in the market. It's not that important. Nowhere near what it used to be years ago, right? All right, let's get our clock back. It's hidden. There it is. So I'm using free trading view to look at the Citibank chart. and I'm also using Thinkorswim. What I like about Thinkorswim is the news feed. For whatever reason, this news feed looks screwed up. This one looks correct. And even if I change this one, it still kind of looks goofy. Sometimes the technology just, it becomes exhausting. You know, you press a button, you don't realize you pressed it, and everything seems screwed up. Let's see if we can. There we go. So we've got a minute. Our range. This is a good way to learn how the range trade works. There's also an OPEC monthly report coming out right now. See, there's our range. It started drawing. Citigroup is early. Citigroup is early. So I would cancel this. I would cancel it. There's no move anyway. Uncheck the checkbox. Their earnings are early. All right. How do I know? How do I know? Because I'm hearing it on Financial Juice Pro. The stock appears up. The market went down a couple of ticks. The market went down a couple of ticks. Now, what's interesting is Citigroup, the stock is up. The market went down. My guess is we're trading the trend in the YM, not Citigroup's earnings. That's what I think. It's just a random trend in the MYM. How many ticks was that? More than I would have thought. 18 ticks. But I cancel. If the earnings come out early and there's not even a blip initially, and I see the stock price is up and the price is moving down, I'm not that interested in trading those earnings because things aren't in sync the way that I want to see the market in sync. All right. So that would make me cancel and just, I wasn't really expecting Citigroup to do much of anything anyway. All right. So somewhat of a dud, somewhat of a dud. And the market's waiting for CPI news now also. So let's get prepared for CPI. So we don't need our Thinkorswim. All right. And let's look at what I think is happening here is we may be getting a test, might be getting a magnet of the low before the CPI report comes out. It's possible. All right, so CPI. So I'm going to get rid of my range trade, my Citibank range trade. I don't need that. So let's look at the DMM for the CPI report. Now, the CPI report has definitely been one of the challenging reports to trade. CPI has been tough. PPI has been tougher than usual. They have a lot of volatility. And if you do trade cash, margins are raised by the brokers. So what does that mean? Margins are raised by the brokers because the brokers think this is going to have the potential to be extremely volatile. So the brokers don't want you to blow up an account. Certainly don't want you to damage a cash account and then not have enough cash to cover the damage you do to it. Now, we always test a lot of different instruments, especially on a report like CPI. Because on CPI, we've traded many different setups. We've traded the YM, we've traded the MNQ, we've traded ZF, and they bounce back and forth between which one is the best. There has not been phenomenal consistency in the CPI report. So right now, we are seeing some good consistency in an MES breakout. So we simplified things this week. Bonds have been decent through and through. You can almost always expect bonds to move on a CPI report. CPI report is the kind of report where many different instruments can move. You can get bonds, ZF. You could get the euro futures to move. You can get all the indexes. They're going to move. So it can be challenging to figure out which is the best instrument to trade. The YM will move, the RTY will move. Sometimes you hear us say, wow, that was a breakout for all. What does that mean? A breakout for all is when virtually every instrument you look at had a breakout trade. We call that a breakout for all. That happens more often than you'd think. That can happen. So there's a couple of approaches you could take today on the CPI report. Just in general, if you want to keep your risk reasonable, you can trade an MES breakout. And the MES breakout has a 40 stop and a bracket of 35. If you trade the ES, then we're using a bracket of 35, but a stop of 25, which is a big stop for the ES. The last three CPIs tested very nicely with the ES breakout. There are members that trade the YM on this report using a 40 bracket and a 50 stop, but we didn't want to confuse everything. I think sometimes we have too many setups on some of the reports. Last month was difficult on some of the instruments. Gold has been very whippy on some of these major reports lately. So the ES looked nice and solid in the testing, but you got to be heads up on this type of a report. This is a high risk trade. It's definitely a high risk trade because it is volatile. It will move the markets. And if it does a whipsaw, it could ruin your trade. Whipsaws are the greatest enemy to a breakout trade. So I'll risk a prop account on this. And I'll trade the ES breakout. And I do accept the risk. So I'm going to right click the chart and I'm going to click 10-minute trades news trader. Breakout is the default setup. 8:29:58 is my activation time. And my bracket is 35. And the targets anywhere between 12 and 50 are within reason with this size of a bracket. And then the target is 25. And if you use the MES, I would use a stop of 40. All right, that's how I would differentiate. Now, if you get a good breakout, yes, Francis, 25 on the stop. If you get a good breakout for all, usually the stop isn't important because it shoots in one direction and it never challenges the stop. That's why breakouts for all are so great. When you get that kind of move, you're not challenging the stop. Okay, so I have reached a point where I need to buy a new phone. I've been using an old Microsoft phone because I love it so much. And it just, there's no software updates anymore, and it's just doesn't work right anymore. 8:29:58 is our trigger time. Bracket of 35. Targets anywhere between 12 and 50. And the stop is 25. And I'm going to check my brackets. Going to label it breakout ES. I'm going to set the time for a minute to 0. Make sure I'm on sim, put my charts on sim, turn the trade on. All right, you can see the brackets. I'd rather be a little bit further away from the high, but I think if we get a good number, I think inflation's going to be down on this number. I'm still on AOL, but I have a Gmail too. But the thing about that Microsoft phone is it's a foldable, but it had two separate screens, so there was no artificial crease. There was an actual real crease, but it was a totally different concept than the foldable phones that we have today. It was the greatest multitasking device and the most fun product I've ever owned. I actually dropped it about a year ago and broke a screen and bought another one because it was still working pretty well. And they're not cheap. They're like $1,000, even though there's no software updates. So I can actually sell both of mine. I could sell my broken one for a couple of $100, and the one I have is working, just that I'll probably redo the software on it, see if it works. So CPI, ES. Microsoft didn't realize they created the best phone ever made, but they released it with the worst buggy software, and it killed the product. They fixed the software as time went on. It took a few years, believe it or not, but they had killed the product by releasing bad software every time they updated the phone. They released a second version of the phone Surface Duo 2 it was called, and the software was just as bad. So they killed the product. People wanted to love it because the form factor was unique. It was great. Anyway, it was it is the best folding phone because of its ability to multitask. Here's the ES setup one more time. Breakout trade, we're going to trigger at 829.58, 35 on the bracket. Targets anywhere between 12 and 50. The stop is 25. Label it breakout ES. I have to check my account and see where I'm going to trade it. Okay, we'll trade it in one of our prop accounts, just a normal, regular, everyday prop account. But what I'll do is I'll set up a second trade after the news, also on the ES, adding a second strategy to the chart as a reverse continue. And I'll do one position for 25 ticks. I'll leave it as a 25 stop. You can always move your stop. It's just a scalp. And we'll trade that in the same account. And we'll label that ES reverse. And both of them get turned on. I always triple check my time on my breakout before I turn on my breakout trade, just in case I've left it on the wrong time. I'm also going to set up a micro gold trade, okay, MGC 0825. I think gold's getting ready to roll. It's getting closer. If we go to new market analyzer and put our gold contract up on our market analyzer, we still got a couple of weeks before gold rolls. So just setting up a reverse continuation after the news. Excuse me. So I'll put a strategy on this chart. Reverse continuation, two positions, 15 and 40, with a stop of 40. Strictly a discretionary trade. It's going to totally depend on the news. And I'll put that, right now gold is 5 minutes before it opens. And I'll label that MGC, reverse continue. Gold gold has been making new lows for a few minutes here. So that will be make sure your chart trader is on the right account. So now what you could expect from gold, as soon as it stops making the new lows, it should have a nice reversal off the lows. But you need to wait probably for the news to kick in before you do anything now on gold. I'm also going to set up a third chart, and it's the reason why I have to use these small charts. I know they're hard to see sometimes in the trade room, and it's because we need these extra charts, and the software doesn't support high res well enough. That's the issue. But we want to see, what do bonds do? ZF 0925. How do bonds take to this news? So we could sim the bond setup. And our bond setup is a breakout, trade type breakout trade. Activate 829.58. The bracket was 10. 8, sorry. Bracket was 8 on ZF. Targets of 8 and 20. The stop is 15. And BE minus 4 if it hits the first target. Target 1 stop move. Label it breakout ZF. Actually, I'm going to save the template. Save CPI ZF today's date 7/15/25. That way we know how we traded bonds next month if you come back and look. I'm going to put the time on 0 just for a minute. We'll check our bracket management. Activation, putting the first two numbers on 0. When you activate a 0 trade, you get your brackets. If they're too wide, you can shrink them so you can manage the trade. And then I'm just going to go back and put the time back to 8:29:58. And now I'll enable that trade. Let's get our news up here. So much to do, right? It's not so simple. There's a lot to keep track of. The main, most important trade is the ES because that has the highest risk and will affect our profit count the most because it's full size instrument. Now, Canada has their CPI also. That would require another chart. Maybe instead of gold, I'll put Canada CPI on because that's an official setup. Okay, here's our CPI. You have Canada and the US. There's a lot of news. You have Empire State Manufacturing also. Canada CPI. It has had some decent trades. Come on, stop. So we do have Canada on the DMM. The gold trade was just an extra trade. So I'm going to remove my gold trade, all right, and set up Canada CPI because it's on the DMM, which I forgot. So the instrument is 6C 0925. It's pretty low volume, no surprise there. It's a trap trade, and it's going to trigger at 8:29:55. The stop is 25. Tier 1 is 18. Tier 2 is 35. I'm going to label it 6C trap. And I guess I'm going to trade it in another prop account. Might as well see what happens with it. So we'll trade the trap trade in account 18. I hope it's a valid account. Let me check. Let's see if that's a valid account. It should be. Yes, that should be a totally normal working account. So we've got the Canada trap. Bonds we're simming, we're testing, all right? And then ES is our main trade. So is anybody confused? Does anybody need help with one of the setups? Ask me if you need help. I'm more than happy to help you set up your setup. So my main trade, just going to relabel my Canada 6C. Now Canada is in a prop account, so I'll keep an eye on that. And that is on number 18, so you check and make sure that your chart trader is on the right account. Otherwise, you won't see your orders. And my other trade is the ES in 17. All right, so that's on 17. So we'll see those orders. Now, last month, CPI didn't have a great move, if I remember correctly. Let's look. Last month, we did have a YM set up as well. Like I said, it had a 40 bracket and a 50 stop. It's not that you can't trade the YM, you can. We had our MES set up in the middle. I do want to thank everyone that's watching us on YouTube. You know the routine out there. Hit the like button, hit the bell so you know when our next stream is. Now, it looked to me like it was a bad directional trade last month. It was a big move, but it was a poor directional trade, meaning either our bracket was the wrong size and it filled in the wrong direction. So that can be an issue on this type of a report because this kind of a report can really whip right as the news comes out. And it was a pretty big bracket too. It was a pretty big bracket. I'm not sure that we could have saved that trade. It was really a pretty big whip. So we've got a couple of minutes. So once again, three different setups. Bonds on the right in SIM, trade in ZF. Canada trap trade for Canada CPI. Trap trade is a planned reversal. If the price bursts up, we would normally get filled short. If the price bursts down, we would normally get filled long if it bursts enough to fill our orders. And then the ES, we're looking for a breakout. And of course, I'm fully aware that we could get a whipsaw on the ES, which makes this a pretty nerve-wracking kind of trade. It's definitely not a family money trade, right? It's not a family money trade. All right, we got a minute to go. A little bit more. So with Canada, what'll happen is 5 seconds before the news, the orders will show up on the chart. Right, Nitin, I know. We always hope there's no data feed issues. That's always a question with these super fast breakout, potentially super fast breakouts. That's why you can decide just trade after the news on some of these high, when they increase the margin, the brokers, you could take those reports and we can just trade them after the news. Okay, there's our Canada orders. Now, I got to fill, it's trying to push up, trying very hard to push up. Canada filled. Now, my data, it froze for a second. The CPI is a little bit higher than expected. I'm surprised the market's going up. I'm surprised this didn't stop me out, to be honest. I'm going to combine the two orders here and just see if I can get out with a small profit. I'm going to shrink my stop so it's not a full stop. The market just doesn't want to come up. It doesn't want to come up. Okay, so I made a buck 50. Bonds look like they're positive. The ES tested the high. I don't know. I'm a little bit confused as to why. Oh, I see what happened. The month over month is lower, and the year over year is a tiny bit higher. So I think the market is seeing that as okay in terms of the news, but not phenomenal. Although, if you realize what happened, we didn't get a very good fill from the data feed. We were filled at the top of the, very high up on the candle. We did not get a good fill. Canada, we have a one position small profit um, on that trap trade. I think what I'll do is cancel the outer tier and just move my stop to safety. So whatever happens in Canada, it'll either be a flat trade or we'll hang out for a minute or two and we'll see if it keeps reversing. It's only a $35 profit. Didn't move all that much. You can, the target, it's not going to get all the way down there. If it decides to be a short, maybe it'll test the low. But at the moment, a couple of ticks would be good. Now, bonds are interesting in that bonds, without looking at a video, looks like they went up, filled long. You certainly have time to move your stop to safety if you want to. It hit that first small target, 6 ticks roughly, right? So type in what happened to you on the trade. Type in what happened to you on the trade. So, Roz, you seem to be really in a panic mode lately. Do you know what I mean? And it's negatively affecting your trades. So I wish I could tell you what the best thing to do to solve that. That incredible fear of losing is making you move in a jittery kind of way. You know what I mean? And I know you know it, and I can see it. I'm trying to think what would help you the best. Um, I think it's just maybe doing a few more sim trades just to feel more comfortable that you have things under control. Yeah, BC, our fill was pretty poor on the ES. I was able to make 150, and I was actually, if your breakout's over, folks, make sure you turn it off. Uncheck it if it's over. Now, bonds, you can be making money because you can still be trailing it, okay? Doc, 212, that's good. Calvin, Langford likes the RTY and YM on these trades. And that's what I was saying. It looks like that a lot of instruments did break out. And I think what probably made it not as good of a trade as it could have been, had the CPI year over year also been below the expectation, I think then we would have had even more of an upward move. As it stands right now, the market certainly is not seeing this as negative. The market's not seeing it as negative. Now, if you think about it, what reality are these numbers based on? These numbers are a complete fraud. Everybody knows that lives in the real world that prices are up. Nothing is down. Maybe the price of gas is down. Does anybody pay for anything where the price is down? I challenge you to tell me what that is that you're actually buying where the price of what you're paying is down. So you can't trust a single thing that the government says. It's all a total lie. They don't tell the truth. Prices are not down. Can you buy a house cheaper? Can you get a mortgage cheaper? Can you get anything cheaper? Car insurance, home insurance, nothing. There's nothing you can buy that isn't more expensive every week, right? So I don't know what kind of metrics they use now, but it's not a metrics that normal people are being affected by. It's just these random indexes that they look at that they could then say, hey, look, we're doing a great job. We got inflation down. Someone else had high inflation. I fixed inflation. It's just not true. We know it, but unfortunately, we don't do anything. Nothing gets done. But it is the truth. These numbers are relatively meaningless to the regular, normal person. That's a shame, right? I know everything I buy is very expensive. Now, my Canadian trade, I'll probably, I don't feel like sitting in this trade for a year. Maybe it'll go down a little more. Right now it's up 45 bucks. So I guess I'll stay in it for a couple more minutes. I'm not going to go on a rant as much as I'd like to. I feel like my whole life is a rant these days. I do want to thank everybody that watched us on YouTube, all two of you. No, I'm kidding. Thank you all for watching. Oh, here we go. Canada starting to make some money. Come on, baby. Okay, so when I see that happen, management of a trap trade, try to place your target at a smart place, the low, right? If it decides to go test the low, then I'm going to make more money on Canada CPI. So there's no reason to rush out of a trade just because it hasn't made money yet. You might as well wait. put your stop in a place where no matter what, you can't lose, and try to manage the trade for as much money as possible, right? Now, we did not take a secondary trade on CPI, all right? Generally, just as a lesson, if you get a news report that can be considered a little bit mixed, like this report was mixed, right? Mixed in the sense that the year over year was a bit higher than expected, but not very much. And the monthly was better than expected. The monthly is more important at the moment because that's what they're looking at for immediate gratification. And that's what they want the Fed to look at. So, also, we had the New York Empire State Manufacturing Index, and that was way better than expected. Does that move the market? Not really that much. Still making money on Canada, so I'll keep trailing it, right? Keep trailing it. And then everybody has their favorite instruments they like to trade. Like Calvin likes to trade the MNQ. He took a reversal on the MNQ. So I'm going to turn off. My bond breakout is over. All right. My ES reversal we could turn off. Let's look at the MNQ. Now the MNQ looks like it had a strong burst up. Now, did it go down first? We'll have to look at smaller time frames to be certain that our bracket would have been safe. Now, Langford traded the RTY. RTY is what the Russell used to be. They ruined the RTY, I believe, when they sold it and changed its name. I don't think it's ever been the same. But it looks like it had a much more solid move in terms of no whip. Certainly not a whip you could see with the naked eye. And remember how we've gone over how you look to tell if something moved? You can't see the movement with the naked eye. You have to go to a smaller time frame chart, right? Last month's CPI report, there was a lesson in the video how to see movement. What I need to do is actually post that for everybody. But the way you see the movement is you go to a much smaller time frame chart, like we're on a minute, right? So you go to the top of your chart, and we're going to go over to a one range. And you go to the time of the news when your orders would have gone on the chart. Our orders would have gone on the chart at 8:29:58. So that's the time you go to on the chart you're interested in analyzing, right? So if I'm on the RTY, for instance, my orders would have gone on the chart at 8:29:58. Now you notice that my Canada trade resolved itself by changing direction and hitting my stop that I was trailing. So it made 50 bucks. It's worth trading it. So that's approximately where our orders would have gone on the chart if our entry time on the RTY was 58. And you could see it just shot up in one direction. There was virtually no whipsaw. You can't see that on a 1 minute chart, but you can see it on a one range chart. Some charts, a one range is so small, it moves constantly and you can't analyze. Like the NQ, use a 5 range on the NQ. Okay? If you ever have trouble calculating. Just go to a tiny bit bigger range chart. The range is better than a 30-second or a 1 second. 1 second charts are nice, but they're not as good as the range chart. Okay? So this is a 1 second chart on the RTY. All right? 1 second sometimes gives you the move, but sometimes it's also you're not able to see with the naked eye, even on a 1 second chart. Sometimes you need even smaller time frames than that. That's why we go down to that one range or five range. That's the only possible way you can truly do a proper analysis of how the instrument moved. If you just use, I remember when I first started working here and I would change a DMM based on my trading, my testing. And I didn't know back then, I didn't know that I had to go to a much smaller time frame chart. I thought you saw everything on the 1 minute chart when I first started. I didn't know. And I remember getting really reamed out by my boss from making a change improperly. Okay? It's okay to make a change if you do it properly. Roz, I think it's a question of just taking some extra sim trades and just making yourself more comfortable. There's nothing, I mean, someone can talk to you until you're blue in the face and say, don't be worried, don't be worried, don't be worried. But it's your money. It's not my money. And you're going to be worried because it's your money. And the best thing to be less worried is to have a couple of real nice winning trades. Nothing is better for trading psychology than having some good winning trades. That's, Roz, I'm not a massive, I think most people know I'm not a massive lover of prop trading. I never liked it. There's things I absolutely despise about it. I think it creates generations of horrible habits in traders. But there's no question people are taking money out of their prop accounts. So but it's no easier than being a cash trader and taking money out of your cash account as a cash trader. It's hard. It's hard. Roz, I would use the company that has the best sale at the time. So you spend the least amount of money on it. I think Bullinox still has a $15 sale. So that means that it only costs $15 a month. And unless you blow up the account, then it's $39 to reset it. That's the only charge. It's like 17 bucks, maybe 17.50. Roz, here's I can give you our affiliate link and the code. I thought that I saw that the sale was still on. If anybody wants to tell me if I'm wrong or right, let me see if I have the link. PTF 91 was the code. PTF 91. And then our affiliate, here it is. I think we make $5. No joke. You know who's getting rich on being an affiliate? Prop Trader Funding. Prop Trader Funding. That they do nothing but promote affiliate links. That's how they're making all their money. They're not making it trading, that's for sure. They're making it with affiliate links. Think about it. If you have thousands and thousands of affiliate links, you don't need to trade. You're making an income. It's very important to be transparent. I'm not familiar with them, Calvin. Futures fanatic. What's their deal? Everybody on YouTube, I'm going to turn off our YouTube stream now. Thank you all for joining us on YouTube. Really appreciate it. I'll put our affiliate link up on YouTube also if you want to join Bullinox. We've been pretty happy with Bullinox overall. All right. Thanks everyone on YouTube. We'll see you tomorrow for, I believe we'll be streaming PPI.